Hello and welcome to YouTube. Today I'm gonna be discussing rock bands that have lied about farewell tours. This means that they have that the bands have embarked on farewell tours, but have these tour bands have done farewell tours, but have toured heavily ever since. They've done, you know, some bands have several of these bands have disbanded after what was meant to be their last ever shows, while others have continued as working as studio bands, and it just took a break from touring, running for several years. Okay, let's get the list started. The first band on this list is The Who. And the end of an era began for The Who in 1978 with the death of their drummer, Keith Moon. In September 1978, Keith Moon died of drug overdose, questioning if the band was even going to continue after Keith Moon's death. The three remaining members ultimately decided that the Who would continue after the death of Keith Moon, with Kenny Jones of the Faces replacing Keith Moon as their drummer. However, Kenny Jones did not receive a warm reception from his bandmates, as his style was not the same as Keith Moon's. The band's two studio albums released in the early 1980s, featuring Kenny Jones, Face Dances, and It's Hard, had a much more lighter, softer sound, and lacked the hard energy Keith Moon was known for, and It's Hard was the band's final studio album for several decades. And after the band released It's Hard in late 1982, the band embarked on what was to be their last ever tour. However, the Who reunited several years later, for multiple tours ever since. The Who first reunited in 1989 for an extensive 25th anniversary world tour, followed by a revival of Quadrophenia in 1996, 1997, and ever since that reunion, The Who became a fully active band again. Next up is Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy Osbourne's studio album, Ozzy Osbourne's 1991 studio album, No More Tears, was his first studio album, and was considered to be his best in nearly a decade. The tour that supported the album was his farewell tour. He embarked in 1992. He embarked on a tour entitled "No More Tours." The tour lasted well throughout the year 1992. It even featured a surprise reunion from his Black Sabbath bandmates during the tour. Ozzy Osbourne briefly retired after the tour, but after a quiet 1993 from Ozzy Osbourne, he was teasing a comeback throughout 1994, and in late 1995 released Osmosis, and began touring again in 1996. Nowadays, in 2018, Ozzy Osbourne embarked on a second farewell tour, No More Tours 2, but the tour wrapped up early due to his ongoing health issues and the COVID pandemic. And in early 2023, Ozzy Osbourne canceled after several years of ongoing health issues. Ozzy Osbourne canceled the tour altogether. Judas Priest. Judas Priest embarked on their farewell tour, the Epitaph World Tour, in 2011. In early 2011, before the tour began, co-lead rhythm guitarist K.K. Downing announced his retirement from the band due to tensions with the other band members, and was replaced by Richie Faulkner as his replacement. Judas. After wrapping up the tour in 2012, Judas Priest announced that the bands would continue and began recording a new studio album after the tour, Redeemer of Souls, which was released in 2014, and the band supported the album with a world tour that began in late 2014. And Judas Priest still continues today. Kiss embarked on a farewell tour in early 2000s. It was the band's last tour with their classic original lineup that featured lead guitarist Ace Frehley and drummer Peter Criss. As the bands reunited with their fellow original members in 1996, the reunion wasn't working out too well, and during in the late 90s, resumed tensions with Ace Frehley and Peter Criss were ongoing, and the band was on the verge of splitting with them again. In early 2001, both lead guitarist Ace Frehley and drummer Peter Criss have both left the band again after concluding the tour, and Kiss ultimately decided to continue as bands with new members, with lead guitarist Tommy Thayer and drummer Eric Singer returning to the band after the tour ended. For the last several years, Kiss has been on a farewell tour, on their second farewell tour, the End of the Road tour, and are likely hanging up soon. And it's Elton John. Elton John announced his retirement from touring during a concert in late 1977, and his retirement from live performing was announced on stage, and he did not announce any formal retirement until at the performance. However, during the 2 years later, he was back on the road, and 2018 he began his farewell tour Farewell Yellow Brick Road, which has been going on for several years, and is wrapping up tonight in Sweden. And please note that I forgot to mention, as for Kiss and Elton John, both tours were both expected to end 2 years ago in 2021, but they were delayed by the COVID pandemic. Motley Crue. In early 2014, Motley Crue announced the final tour. The band signed a legal document promising that the band would not play live again after the end of 2015. Lead guitarist Mick Mars has severe health issues that and suffers from ankylosing spondylitis and the band and after the conclusion of the tour with the New Year's Eve show in 2015 in their hometown of Los Angeles, California, the band said for several years that they would not reunite. However, in late 2019, after years of turning down reunion tour offers, Motley Crue eventually changed their minds and reunite and announced the stadium tour with Def Leppard and opening acts Poison and Joan Jett and the Black Hearts to take place in 2020. But the tour was canceled and delayed for 2 years due to the COVID pandemic. The Doobie Brothers. The Doobie Brothers embarked on their farewell tour in 1982. The tour featured guitarist and co-lead vocalist Patrick Simmons as the band's only remaining original member, along with Michael McDonald on keyboards. And it also featured guest appearances from then former member at the time, Tom Johnston. The late 70s was a time when the band changed their musical style, as Tom Johnston had left the band and transitioning from the band's rootsy bluesy sound towards a more soul inspired R&B sound with lineup changes. Just the band was going through musical style changes. However, 5 years later, in 1987, the Doobie Brothers reunited for a series of benefit concerts, and the band has been touring extensively ever since, with Tom Johnston and Patrick Simmons both performing on stage together, with occasional appearances from Michael McDonald. Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath announced their retirement in 1999, shortly after first reuniting with their classic original lineup. However, in late 2000, the band, with the band's original lineup back together, began recording a new studio album together. But the sessions were halted as Ozzy Osbourne had plans to record another solo album. Black Sabbath Black Sabbath would continue to perform at occasional Ozfests with this lineup, but but the band but the bands would not fully reunite until 2011, although without drummer Bill Ward. The bands embarked on their final farewell tour in 2016 and had not performed live until and the band's final show was in early 2017. As their members have been suffering a series of health issues lately, it's likely that Black Sabbath has been serious about their 2016 farewell tour being their last. Scorpions. In early 2010, Scorpions released their studio album Sting in the Tail, and embarked on a 3-year farewell tour in support of the album. However, in 2011 and 2012, the bands realized that the band was rethinking retirement and decided that they wanted to continue going after the success of their studio album Come Black, which featured newly recorded covers of their newly recorded hits of their recordings of their classic hits alongside cover songs from the 60s. The Scorpions decided to stay together. Scorpions still continue to remain together today. But with only one lineup change today, as drummer James Kodak was fired from the band in early 2016 due to his drug and alcohol problems, and was replaced by former Motorhead drummer Mickey D. Cream called it quits in late 1968 due to ongoing tensions between Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker, who have both hated each other before Cream even formed. And Cream played their final show in November 1968 at the Royal Albert Hall in London, England, and in 2005, Eric Clapton realized how much he missed playing alongside Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker. And while Cream's reunion tour was not a full-scale tour, Cream did play a series of successful dates, playing 4 nights at the Royal Albert Hall in London, England in May 2005, alongside 3 shows at Madison Square Garden in New York in October 2005. During the 3 shows in October 2005 in New York, old tensions between Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker had resumed, and the band was unable to play more shows. The band. On Thanksgiving, in November 1976, on Thanksgiving night, the band played a show entitled The Last Waltz. The show featured acts such as Neil Young, Eric Clapton, Bob Dylan, Neil Diamond, Ronnie Hawkins, Dr. John, Muddy Waters, Paul Butterfield, Van Morrison, basically Joni Mitchell. Featured. It was the band's last concert with lead guitarist Robbie Robertson. And years later, the band's reunited without Robbie Robertson in 1983, and the surviving members of the bands continued without keyboardist Richard Manuel, who committed suicide in early 1986, reducing the band to a trio. But the band still continued all the way until Rick Denko's death in December 1999. 9 Inch Nails. And Trent Reznor announced his retirement from touring after playing a final show in late 2009. Trent Reznor ultimately decided to continue to record and work on other projects for the next several years, but he was done touring for a while. 2013, however, 9 Inch Nails announced their first tour in many years, and Trent Reznor ultimately changed his mind and decided that 9 Inch Nails would tour again. Meatloaf announced his retirement from touring in 2013. The tour was called Last at Bat. Meatloaf had a history of health issues. After Meatloaf wrapped up his farewell tour, he did storytellers like Las Vegas residency and embarked on what was his final ever tour in 2015 and 2016. Meatloaf died in January 2022. Status Quo embarked on what was to be their final tour in 1984, but the band still continued to perform live as Status Quo opened the Live Aid concert, the UK Live Aid concert in 1985, and in 1986 began touring again and have toured ever since. The Black Crowes. The Black Crowes, while they didn't plan on disbanding and just took a long hiatus. In 2010, the Black Crowes were celebrating their 20th anniversary as a band, and throughout 2011, they actually had continued to say goodnight to the bad guys tour with a series of shows in Europe that summer, and before resuming their hiatus and remaining on hiatus until early 2013, and in early 2013, the Black Crowes embarked on their first tour in 3 years, and then in early 2015, the Black Crowes disbanded due to ongoing tensions between Chris and Rich Robinson, and even the two. And the Robinson brothers even had even tensions between the Robinson brothers and their drummer Steve Gorman. And in late 2019, Black Crowes announced their 30th anniversary reunion tour with a new lineup and opted not to invite longtime drummer Steve Gorman back, as old tensions between Chris and Rich Robinson would only resume if he were to come back. Anyway, I hope you liked my video. Please rate and comment, and anyway, if anyone could show me how to put a subscribe button on YouTube. Please, if anyone could help me with a subscribe button to put on any YouTube videos, please show me how. Please help me with that. I would really appreciate it. Thank you. I hope you liked my video. Thanks. Bye.